You're looking for a storage box that actually fits into the way you live, something that just works, won't steal your time, and feels worth the cash instead of being a glorified shelf of specs. If you've ever set up a media server that sputtered when you tried to stream a game capture, or you bought a NAS that turned out to be a paperweight because you couldn't get the drives you wanted, you know how frustrating that can be. The fear of spending a few $100s on a unit that ends up gathering dust is real, and that's why today we're digging into the Asustor AS5402T with its bundled 41TB SSDs. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, what makes the AS5402T different from the sea of tube NASes you see on the market? The biggest headline is the quad-core Intel Celeron N5105 and 4 M.2 NVMe slots, which means you're not stuck with a single 2.5-inch drive cage. The bundle ships with 4 1TB SATA SSDs, so you have a ready-made 4 TB pool right out of the box. That's a solid start for anyone who wants a fast, always-in library for game recordings, live stream assets, or a family media hub. Now, let's talk about real-world usage. I set up the unit in a typical home office where my primary workflow is pulling raw game footage from a capture card, rendering it in Premiere, and then pushing the final files to a personal cloud for remote access. The moment I connected the two 2.5 GBE ports to my router, I saw a noticeable jump in transfer speeds compared to my old 1 GBE box, roughly 1.8 GB per second when copying a 50 GB project folder across the network. That's not just a numbers game, it translates into a half-hour saved on a nightly backup routine that used to drag on for an hour. The 4 M.2 slots are a hidden gem for people who want to keep the 2.5-inch bays free for larger HDDs or for future expansion. In practice, I populated 2 of those slots with 1 TB NVMe drives and left the other 2 open for when I decide to add a high-capacity 8 TB HDD for long-term archiving. The OS, Asustor's ADM, recognized the NVMe disks instantly, and the RAID options were straightforward, no cryptic command line needed. I opted for a RAID 5 configuration across the 4 SATA SSDs, which gave me 3 TB of usable space and the peace of mind that a single drive failure wouldn't wipe out my library. One practical strength that's easy to overlook is the HDMI 2.0B output. I plugged the NAS directly into my living room TV and used the built-in Plex server to stream a 4K movie. The playback was buttery smooth, and because the unit handled the transcoding on its own CPU, my streaming device didn't have to work overtime. For gamers who want to turn their console library into a couch-ready media station, that kind of plug-and-play convenience can be a deal-maker. On the flip side, there are a few trade-offs that become apparent once you move past the first weekend of excitement. The 4 GB of DDR4-2933 RAM sounds modest, but the Celeron chip isn't a powerhouse either. When I ran multiple Docker containers for home automation, a personal cloud, and a VPN service simultaneously, the system started to feel the pressure. CPU usage hovered around 80% and the web interface became a little sluggish. If you're planning to run more than a couple of services at once, you'll either need to accept the occasional lag or be ready to upgrade the RAM, something Asustor does allow, but it's an extra step that casual users might not anticipate. Another practical consideration is the power draw. The bundled 4 SSDs and dual 2.5 GBE ports push the unit to about 30 W under load. For a device that's meant to stay on 24/7, that adds up on your electric bill, especially if you're also using it as a backup target for several PCs. It's not a showstopper, but if you're on a tight energy budget, you might want to think about powering down the NAS during long periods of inactivity and using WakenLAN to bring it back online when needed. Who should buy this? If you're a gamer or content creator who values fast access to large video files, wants a ready-made SSD pool, and appreciates the flexibility to add NVMe drives later, the AS5402T is a compelling choice. It also makes sense for a small household that needs a centralized media server with enough horsepower to handle 4K streams without choking the network. The dual 2.5 GBE ports give you redundancy or link aggregation, which is a nice safety net for anyone who can't afford a single point of failure in their home network. Who should skip it? If you're looking for a pure budget NAS to store documents and a handful of photos, you'll probably be overpaying for the SSD bundle and the extra ports you'll never use. Likewise, if your workflow involves heavy multitasking running several VMs, intensive Docker workloads, or a large number of simultaneous transcoding